kindly send her apologies, cannot be here today. And I also note that Colin, you'll be dining out around 10 o'clock. So it's just feel free to come and go as you need to. Okay. If there are declarations of interest, I think those of you that have any will have completed the necessary forms. If there's any that anybody needs to call out now, then please do so. Otherwise, we'll crack on with the rest of the meeting. Okie dokie. Natalie, our chief nurse, over to you for the patient experience.
Thank you, Bede. And today's board, we have a focus on mental health recovery and rehabilitation. So really delighted that board have had an experience from Amy shared with them prior to board. And this is about our individual placement and support team, which support employment services. So we're joined by Amy and Carol. So to put a bit of context before I hand over to Carol to talk to you a little bit more about the service, we all know how important employment is to mental well-being. It's a really key factor of social determinant in our health and well-being. Having positive employment is the key in getting people into work and supported into work. And I hope that Amy's story really resonated, and thank you, Amy, for sharing, because it was such an enjoyable watch to hear how service has supported you and given you that engagement in employment. But Carol's with us, and Carol is one of our employment services coordinators for North of the County. So I'm going to hand over to Carol, who's going to tell us a little bit about the service.
Lovely, thank you, Natalie. Can you hear me all right? I'm so sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong for me today, so I apologise if not. I do have a presentation. Pardon?
We can hear you, we can't see you. Ah, there you are.
Everything's frozen, I'm so sorry.
There she is. There, you're in the sound, Carol.
You can hear me now, thank you. Yeah, I do have a presentation, but unfortunately I can't share because nothing seems to be working for me today. So I'll give you a bit of a brief overview just with me talking. I'm sorry, I have shared the slides. So for those of you that don't know, IPS is a evidence-based model. It's been going for about 25-30 years. It supports people under mental health services to find and sustain paid employment. So we are embedded with all the clinical teams in the neighbourhood mental health teams, early intervention and psychosis, and the AOT team in Hereford. So we've got 3 teams, one in Hereford, one in North Worcestershire, and one in South Worcestershire, and we're embedded within those mental health teams, working closely with the clinicians and patients under those services to find paid employment. We focus on rapid job search, employer engagement, zero exclusion, and making sure that we get it right first time. Part of the role is about going out to employers and actively promoting the service to seek those opportunities for our clients, and really making sure that we can sell their skills, their abilities, so that they can move forward into the workplace. And we all know that, I'm sure all of you sat in this room have had a job that you really hate and know what that feels like, and have had jobs where you love. So for us, it's really important to understand the client's needs and wants so that we can match those jobs accordingly. The current sort of KPIs that we look at, we need to achieve 16 job outcomes per employment specialist, which is around 40% of our caseload. We currently sit at, let me just double check those figures because I looked this morning. We currently sit at 49%, so we're above that on KPIs. And for sustainment, we're expected to achieve 65% of those that we get into work to stay in work in more than 13 weeks. We currently sit at 85% as a service for that. So what we are doing is getting it right first time. We also, not only do we help people find work, 25% of our caseload is around supporting those people that have a job currently, but may be experiencing difficulties in work, or they might be off sick and wanting to return to work. So we've got dedicated employment retention specialists who support clients and their employers to make that transition back into work and get those difficulties resolved, because it's far easier to keep that job than it is to lose it and then start that process again. I can't think of anything else that I can add, but I can open it up to questions if anybody's got any questions for me.
That's great, Carol. Thanks. I'll hand you back to Beach to coordinate questions.
Thank you. Questions, if anybody has any. Colin and then Sue.
Really, really positive stuff, Carol. Thank you very much for giving the information. Oh, you talked about finding employers who would be receptive to assisting you in giving employment opportunities. Are there any types of employer or sectors that are particularly receptive, or do you find lots of listening ears?
I guess that's a really difficult question, because it doesn't necessarily to be the sector, it's about the person that we're speaking to in that moment in time. And because we work with people that have got varying different levels of education, career experience, wants and needs, we work with so many different sectors. Mostly, I would say people are receptive to us. They understand what we're trying to do and they want to improve wellbeing and inclusivity in their workforce, so they're quite open to discussions. We do have the odd employer that is not receptive, if I'm honest, and it's quite difficult then to break that stigma and work with them to get them to understand that a lot of their workforce may already be experiencing mental health difficulties that they're not aware of, and what we offer can support them and their wider workforce. I haven't answered your question. There isn't anywhere particular that is a better or worse sector, really. It really does depend on the individual that we're talking to, their experiences and their engagement, really.
Thank you.
Yes, I was going to ask, you know, I know Amy is listening, and thank you, Amy. Thank you for being as open and honest with us. That was brilliant to hear your story. I'm just wondering how many, a hard question off the top of your head, how many of the people that you found placements for have been in either our trust or in the wider NHS?
Quite a few, to be honest. I don't know the percentages, but there's been loads over the years actually that we've placed. The trust provide work forward placements as well, so not only the general vacancies that are out across NHS jobs that we apply for, the trust also offer work forward placements where it's a specific budget for individual services that can, if they're having particular difficulty recruiting or particular backlog of work, we look at the job descriptions for those roles and work with the managers to pare that back and create a vacancy that is on a 6-month placement. So it's kind of a bit of a work trial, a bit of a work experience, but also the trust gains valuable employment sources through other means. They're not as widely used as they could be, and I think there's a lot that we can do with the trust to expand the knowledge of IPS and open those lines of communication to make sure that we can place more people, because the amount of different job roles that are within the trust across the different sectors are huge and cover quite a lot of people's wants and needs on our caseload.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you, Carol, and thank you, Amy. That was actually quite. I just ask, you talked about 13-week success, about 80-something%. That's absolutely brilliant. What's our success rate beyond the 13 weeks, say in a year? And what do you think are the critical aspects of this model that is giving us that success?
So the success, we monitor it at 13 weeks and 26 weeks. 26 weeks is around the same. There's not much drop off. 12-month mark, generally speaking, we don't work with people for that length of time to be able to track that success, and that I think we need to build into the model a way of contacting those clients and getting to know if they're still in work and within 12 months. Because they're off caseload, we don't know whether they're still in work. We assume that they are. Critical to the success, it's the in-work support. So we don't just support people to get a job and then leave them on day one. We work really closely with the client and the employer to make sure that there's a robust support structure around them. And we offer then time and limited support until that client no longer needs it, to make sure that that work is sustainable. And I think that's the key. The in-work support is phenomenal that the team do. They look at kind of well at work plans, how looking at where possible trigger points could be, what the reasonable adjustments could look like to support that. I'm really just, it's phenomenal, the work that they do, and the buy-in from the employers as well for that success.
Thank you, Carol, and well done.
Thank you.
Carol, may I ask how long? I mean, it's probably varies quite significantly. How long do you work with individuals across the period of time that IPS support, both to get the jobs or get into the job market, but as well as help them thereafter?
So the model dictates that it's time unlimited. So for as long as a person needs, we might work with somebody who's ready and raring to go and can get into work quite quickly, in which case it's quite a short turnaround. And for others that are a little bit further away from the labour market, it might take a little bit longer. I would say the average length of stay on caseload is probably around the 12-month mark, from start to finish. So they may not have been in work for sort of 6 months, but once everything's settled, we would discharge them. So it can be really varied, but I would say the average length of stay is around 12 months.
Thank you.
And sometimes the getting to from assessment to job start is the bit that takes the length of time, because there's a lot of understanding around each individual, their needs, and then finding the right employer, because for us, it's so important to make sure that we get it right first time, so that people don't have that feeling of going into work, it not working, and then their confidence being knocked. So it takes an awful lot to get the right employer, the right hours, the right job role, the right understanding, and that's the bit that takes the most amount of time, I would say.
No, I can see why that's absolutely essential. Good.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of all of us here, thank you, Carol, but also importantly, thank Amy. The story that you were able to tell was really powerful. You're an incredibly articulate individual, so thank you very much for telling us about your story. And Carol, the service that you and your colleagues provide is fantastic. So please, thank you to you, but please share those thanks with your colleagues too.
I will do. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Feel free to stay on, but or dial off. Oh,
Thank you. I will go, but thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Okay. Still got Amy on there. Okay. Brilliant. That is really a powerful part of why we do these patient experience stories right at the beginning. It really sets the tone for the rest of the meeting and grounds us in why we're here and what we're doing. Okay, in respect to questions from members of the public, I haven't been notified of any, so that's fine. And the chair's report. That's me. I didn't do that. I didn't. My apologies. I didn't do the minutes. Go backwards. All of you have had the opportunity to look at the minutes from the last meeting. If everybody's happy with those, unless there's any questions or comments, we'll take those as a true record. Okay, thank you. Matters arising. There's only the one on there regarding priority programs. Were there any? It's on that.
I think it's quite straightforward. It's basically there's a
technical error in the paper last time, which is now
Yeah.
corrected.
and there it sort of actually does point to a broader point that we may bring back to talk to board. In fact, Gemma and I had a long conversation about this very topic last night around Rio optimization. But for now, I think it's about saying that action is with Gemma. We probably do need to reassess where the priority programme is at, and we'll take that action away. So we can take one off the action log and say it's closed.
Thank you. Okay, I was so quick to get to my report. So back to me then. Chair's report. Firstly, my first time, I guess, reporting to you as a board in respect of my substantive role as your chair. So thank you very much for all the very warm and wonderful messages I've had from all of you and from others. It's been fantastic to receive. So thank you for that. The last couple of months have been busy, as you'd expect, and I'm not going to read out or go through the report. You've all got it in front of you, but I will draw on a couple of things, and please feel free to ask any questions on any of these areas. I think the opportunity to write to the board members as soon as I was appointed in the role, just to outline the things that I think are really important, the pillars that for me personally resonate very strongly. They map nicely, of course they do, into the strategy that we already have in the organisation. But importantly, they signal the types of things that we need to focus on as a team. And I was grateful for the feedback I had, because I think that all of us are on the same page in respect to those. So that's great. There's definitely a warm and very positive response when I go out and meet some of the teams that I meet. I think the feeling is still that we're a very bureaucratic organisation. No doubt we are. But I think some of the steps that we are taking to make sure that we're engaging with the teams at the coalface, if you like, and really listening to them, playing back some of that to them around actions that they may leave us with, I think has been really powerful. I've heard a lot more of that recently. So grateful for all of you and the roles that you play in doing that. So thank you. I had the opportunity of doing a very, very long distance business trip to Australia. It was part, by the way, just for the record, the organisation did not take the business trip to Australia.
I was just thinking that
I was on a personal trip in Australia, but took the opportunity to go and see the research facility at University of New South Wales, where there's a team called Mind Garden, and we've lent on that team significantly over the years, and we continue to in respect of shaping some of the services. A service called Shape, in fact, which is all about physical well-being for those that suffer from serious mental illness. So it was a really powerful visit in respect of fantastic work that they do. But they were able to point us to more local universities and other research institutions that actually are doing some incredible stuff. So I'd like to tap into that as time goes by. Is that a hand in here? There. Okay. I'll quickly update on the non-executive director post. At the time of writing this, it was that we'd had a significant number of applications. We had a successful recruitment round, and we'll be going through the details of those that we appointed in due course once the respective processes have been completed. But I'm very grateful again to all board colleagues, and also to Katrina Boffey from NHSE, to who else was on the team? Oh, Krishni, of course. Krishni Waring, chair of the ICB, and Francis Martin, chair of Worcester Acute and Wye Valley Trust, for helping us out from a panel perspective in terms of the recruitment. So thank you to those individuals. We'll come out with more information around the names of the individuals in due course. In terms of a couple of really important things I wanted to land, one thing was that I went to a conference, and that the anti-racist conference that was held up in Leeds a little while ago, and Fee from comms and also Naomi from HR were able to join me. It was a fantastic event. It reminded me certainly of the need to ensure that we continue to work in an environment where everybody's treated equally, with a sense of respect given to every individual, regardless of their backgrounds and their preferences. And I think that whilst the focus was on anti-racism, I think we all came away thinking, actually, there's so much more we can do about equality, equity, and respect for individuals more generally. So I would hope that we continue our focus and build on that. No doubt we will. Sue and the People and Culture Committee have got this as a very big prong in respect of what they're doing. So I congratulate the work we're already doing and push us on to do even more in that space. There are so many people I meet that almost all of them exhibit all of our CARES values. But it's important that we call those out, the extra special individuals, if you like, that are really doing an amazing job at living our values. And the ones listed here, that's the Wyre Forest ward. That's Manda Wild, who I had the pleasure of seeing. She's in the photo, and her team. The Complex Needs Service in Worcestershire, the Emotional Needs Service in Herefordshire, Kieran Hegarty, and also finally Sophia Windsor and Jamie Lee Manda, all very deserving winners of CARES Award since the last So I think that's everything I wanted to say at this stage, unless there are any questions. Very happy to answer. Thank you. In that case, we'll move on to Helen, your report, Chief Executive report.
Each. So you've got my report. I won't go through it in lots of detail, but I will just pull out a few points. Obviously, my first point you've already highlighted, Lee, so congratulations formally on your appointment on behalf of the board. We also have an update in terms of leadership in the operational side of our organisation. So we've confirmed a new senior operating structure, and we've started to put that in place with some important appointments being made. So board will be aware that we're moving from 5 service delivery units to 2 service delivery divisions underpinned by a care group structure. So we're just kind of working through that. Obviously, that is going to flow further through the organisation, but we're just handling that really sensitively with colleagues, and we will bring updates to the board in due course. We also have some expansion to our apprenticeship and workforce entry routes, and we have some exciting new clinical apprenticeships coming in the summer, which you can see detail outlined in the report. But I think that's a really important part of us growing our workforce from within and also supporting local people into employment. It would be remiss of me not to focus for a minute on the learning disabilities respite care issue, which obviously the board has spent quite a bit of time in depth considering. So as board members will be aware, there hasn't been a change in the position. We are continuing to work towards closure in June. So we've been working closely with the County Council and system partners. I will just note briefly that I feel that actually those relationships have moved into a more constructive space, putting the patients at the heart of what we do, which has been a real positive, but it has taken a lot of work. So I just thank Scott and Natalie and other colleagues and Sue with all the HR transition for the amount of work that's gone in there. I think one of the things that I'm really proud of actually is that it looks like we're going to find roles for a significant number of our people within our organisation, and actually there's a bit of an overlap with the previous item around some apprenticeship or retraining opportunities that we found for people. And we'll provide an update in due course when this is all done. But I think there's a lot of learning for us around how to handle a process like this well, and the amount of engagement that is required. Because there was around 50 people employed in this service, as members will be aware. So that has been very intensive, but I think successful. I think what is also a real challenge that has emerged during this period is the kind of twin track of trying to deliver service resilience, whilst also trying to find rehoming, replacement, new roles. And also, of course, some of our staff will quite reasonably find other jobs outside our organisation. And in this particular instance, it isn't a service where you can just easily pull in temporary staff to support because of the very specialist nature of it. So I know that has caused some consternation with our service users and families, because we have not been able to fulfil all of the placements up to the very end of the contract, which we would have hoped to do. We have worked really hard to try and put all contingency in place, including offering extra shifts, including asking colleagues to step back in to do some of that cover, even perhaps where they find additional roles. But it is inevitable that our service delivery resilience has been impacted. So it's almost like with success on the one hand, you cause an issue on the other. But this is a very tricky balance. So I just want to thank all the execs who've worked really hard during this period, as well as all colleagues in the service and the managers of that service who have worked so hard to try and provide services during this really challenging period, and also to communicate with families through this time, which has been really hard as well. So I just want to spend a little bit more time on that, just to update board with where we are. And obviously, I think by the time we come together next time, we will be past the closure date, so we can probably provide a bit of wrap up in my report that next time. I think, Beej, you've already touched on the anti-racist agenda in your update, but we also had our own anti-racism workshop. There was some really important learning out of that session. Many of us attended that. And I'm also pleased to confirm we've appointed a new equality, diversity and inclusion lead, which is somewhere where we've had a bit interim cover for a while. So I'm really pleased we'll have a permanent appointment, be able to share a bit more on that with you in due course as well. We've also had been in the process of having a special educational needs and disabilities SEND inspection. Again, that's not something we can talk about yet in terms of any details, but I think suffice to say, with all these kind of inspection processes and just attending the sessions together, there's already learning that's starting to emerge. So we have been starting to think about how we put some of that learning into play. I think, as with every stock take, there will be some positives and some improvement areas for us to focus on, but we will share more on that in due course. In fact, the ICB cluster board that myself and Beej attended yesterday, there was a significant focus, wasn't there, Beej, on the SEND agenda, children in general, and some kind of updates from the ICB on a SEND position statement work that they're doing. So if members are interested, those papers are in the public domain, and they do provide some wraparound context at a cluster level. Couple of other bits then before I finish. I said I wasn't going to say that much, and then actually I have said quite a lot, so bear with me, apologies for that. But there's a lot to update as always. So a few other bits and bobs. We've got some extended minor injuries unit capacity, because we are obviously sorry, that's looking back. We put some extended capacity in at Easter, and actually I met with some of our minor injuries units teams recently at the weekend, and they talked about what a difference that made, having that capacity. So there is something for us to take away working with our system colleagues, because obviously that's not something that we directly provide. It comes from our acute trust colleagues. Is that if we were able to resource that, staff were telling me what a positive benefit it made to the service we offer. So I think there's something there for us to take forward into our winter planning thinking, because inevitably it may only be May, but before we know it, we will be back into the winter planning conversation. So I think that was an important thing just to capture. And I just want to thank our minor injury unit teams, who do an amazing job in quite pressured circumstances. And so, yes, we have then a bit summary of my visits. I won't run through them all. There's a bit of an update around in my local update around the cluster. As I said, that's now sort of formally in place, and we're having those meetings moving forward in the new cluster arrangements now. And also some updates in terms of the national, and we've had obviously another period of resident doctor industrial action. We are not clear at this point whether that is going to continue. I think, you know, if you look in the national press, it looks like it is probably quite likely to continue, but when we have formal notification of that, we will plan accordingly. And I think that's probably all I'm going to pull out for now, but I'm happy to take questions on anything in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Ellen.
Thanks, Ellen. That seems like a very busy period. And I can see you put in a lot of work trying to stabilize the better staff. But my only question is around the rest of the transition. A lot seems to be happening, isn't it? Especially when you talk about the leadership. How are we making sure that we maintain our quality oversight, our operational work going on while we go through all this transition? Because it can't be easy. The NHS is a little bit topsy-turvy at the moment. So how are we making sure that we are taking the lessons that we've learned from everything we've done in supporting the staff and supporting the ones that are going through this transition as we change divisions.
Yeah, I mean, you make a really good point on you, because it's really challenging, isn't it, to go through change and keep your eye on the fundamentals. I think we would all absolutely recognise that. And I think it's a sort of tension we live with a lot in the NHS. And I think at the moment we are also looking at how we strengthen some of our clarity around our shared objectives and also our risk management processes and our governance approach. So obviously at the last board development session, which I don't think you were with us last time, sadly, we had an update from Natalie around starting to think about how we are going to take forward reviewing our integrated governance approach to make sure it's absolutely fit for purpose. This afternoon, I'm going to be working with all of you, with all of us around the table, to talk about our risk strengthening our risk management approach and our risk strategy. And another thing that we've been doing as an executive team is working on our shared objectives. So we're really clear about our priorities. And I think I'm right in saying it's now pretty much complete in terms of each colleagues around the table working with their deputies, their senior leadership team, again, to ensure that alignment. So I don't think that I can give you perfect assurance, but I think what I can say is we're working on trying to cut out some of the wood for the trees to say these are the priorities, and put some structured work in place around risk, around governance, around how we're going to manage that flow of information up and down the organisation so we can spot issues early. And I think already some of the work we're doing in that space is flagged some improvements that we've already got in train around some of our issues, our health and safety management, some of the work around risk, some of the work around well, yeah, I won't go into lots of detail now, but I think we're already starting to see the areas where we need to put our focus. So I do take some assurance.
Sonia. Any other questions or comments for Ellen? Ellen, you mentioned the ICB meeting we were at yesterday. I guess opportunity to thank Krishni and Simon at the ICB for the spotlight that they shone on children and young people. Clearly, we play a big role in delivering outcomes for that part of the population. So it was a really good and healthy session, exposing what the challenges look like and the opportunities that we have in front of us and how we're going to mobilise it to achieve this. Plenty more work to do, but I thought that was a good session yesterday. There's no other questions for Ellen. Then we'll move on over to patient experience report.
Again, I won't go through the full report, and I'll just pull out some key highlights. I'd just like to start by thanking Jane and her team for putting this report together, and all of those people who are engaged and involved in those forums that are mentioned throughout the as you'll see in the report, there was a lot of work happening around health literacy and ensuring that the documentation that we send out to our patients is of an appropriate reading age to make that as accessible as possible. And our forums are really contributing to that. So I think that's a really important ongoing piece of work with the services. And will also be really useful as we move into our patient engagement portal, that the information on there is accessible and Care Opinion continues to be successful. We had a patient experience week in this period, and from the Care Opinion stories, we pulled out some really fantastic stories, and were able to shortlist people for awards that were then voted on by patients. We were really honoured to be able to go and share those awards with the teams, which is a really fantastic thing to be able to do, and really shows how the stories are kind of contributing and allowing us to thank our staff for the great experiences that they're offering our patients. I think it is fair to say that the work continues though with Care Opinion to make sure that all services are able to use it and access it. We know that for some it's harder than others, so the team will continue to work to ensure that we really can draw experiences from all of the teams and patients that we serve. The other thing is that we're doing is we're quite keen to triangulate the information that we receive. So we have a dashboard that pulls in information from patient complaints and our PAL service. We're looking at how we can do that through Care Opinion as well, so that we can then start to really understand the themes from all of those different sources of information that we're getting from patients. So that's something that we will be doing in the coming months, and that hopefully will then be reflected in this report, where we can start to share a little bit more around some of those themes that are coming out. So we'll be working closely with members of Natalie's team to really get that triangulation starting to happen. We are also looking to update our strategy, and we'll be looking within that around our framework for co-production, and also a really key thread through that is how we will reduce health inequalities. So we're pulling all of that together, and we'll be looking to co-produce that with our team, with patients and carers as well. Another really important thing to pull out is in health inequalities. We know that one of the issues that we have is around reporting, us really understanding who we are serving and who we aren't, and it is, you know, some of that demographic data is missing in our records. So the team have produced a webinar, and they're going out and talking to teams. They came to our senior leadership network around really sort of working through some of those challenges on gathering that data. And we're also going to think about how we can do self-reporting, maybe through the patient engagement portal, etc., as an option, because, you know, these can feel like quite challenging conversations to have, but it's so important that we really understand who we are and are not serving, and also so that staff can use that information to make sure that they make appropriate adjustments for people who are coming to our services. One other thing to just draw out that people may want to take a look at, that I forgot to mention when I talked about Care Opinion, is the team have produced a What Good Looks Like booklet, which is really fantastic. So again, it starts to pull out some of the themes. They are available in a paper copy, and they were launched during the Patient Experience Week. So teams can take a look at those, work through their teams. You know, this is what we've heard good looks like. So really, really great product from the team as well. That's all I was going to draw out, but I'm also happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gemma. I thought the report was quite compassionate, very thoughtful, and just portrays how much people want to be engaged in what's going on in the health system. Why I have to ask you about the challenge. Clearly states there, you know, they've revisited and found that. So my question to us is, how are we going to take their reports and make sure that we begin to embed them, so that when they come back, you know, when they revisit, they can see that they've said and we've done.
Yeah, I think that's a really helpful question. Thank you. So yes, I've had a long conversation with Jane, and also we have the Community Hospitals Pathway as one of our key priority programmes. So actually within that programme, off the back of this, and also some of the discussions that we've had with the programme team, we are looking to really work with patients on making sure that we embed co-production and the feedback from this report into that programme of work, because we know it is a really difficult time for families when people are being discharged home after they've had, you know, been through hospital journey. And so we will be looking to embed that through the programme so that we really start to take those lessons and learn them. I think, though, the point you make is right. We need to really work on, when we are doing these reports, if there isn't a programme where we can, this was convenient, we had a programme we could really put it into. But actually, we need to make sure that teams are owning the reports and that it's not sitting with the patient experience team as their work. So we'll pick that up in terms of how do we make sure that that's really owned, and what are the actions that we're going to take off the back of that, because I think that is absolutely right to raise. Thank you.
Go ahead.
It's not so much of a question, just more of a reframe about the health inequalities conversation that we've had over the past couple of weeks. I was really struck. I went to the Health and Wellbeing Board in Worcestershire earlier this week. I'm just going back across my notes, but we were doing the best start in life, so children and young people. And it's measured through a good level of development. And in Worcestershire, we had 68% for our children. But in our disadvantaged children, that drops to 43.4, and the national average is 51. So there's something really out of kilter in our lower super output areas. The work we need to do with public health, and just really driving quite a proactive, targeted conversation in some of those spaces, that is really stark. So it's just to say that we've started to talk about we need to reset some of our thinking in this area and just be much more, I think, proactive in terms of what we're trying to do. So didn't know if you just wanted to add on to that, Gemma.
Yeah, no, I think that's really valuable. And as you say, you know, these are the things that really affect people's health outcomes, you know, that start in life. So I'll pick it up with you outside as to how we can build that into some of our engagement work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I've been at some of the groups that are mentioned in here and seen the sort of level of quality conversations that are actually happening, and that's really good. And I guess what I'm really interested in is looking forward, and it's good to see that we're going to do a strategy refresh, but I suppose it's really what is our ambition around this and the whole patient experience world. And it's a little bit too early to be asking you that in your new role. But one of the themes would be, are we looking at where others are doing this elsewhere and what works really well? You know, how people are perhaps providing more direct patient experience input into the board, all those sorts of things. And I'm guessing that will form part of the strategy work. But it really is, this is what we've done, but what's our real ambition in terms of capturing and using that patient experience?
Couldn't agree more. Yes, it will be built into the strategy, so it'd be good to have a conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Also really enjoyed the report and would recognise your points, Carol, about how do we start to move into, rather than a reflection, the kind of what are we doing then. I was just going to share a small insight I had the other day. So I went to the Community Hospital Association conference. I was doing a little presentation there, which was really interesting, and also there was all the stands and things. And actually, I'm not saying we necessarily need a tool to do it, but this was quite a strong theme about carer engagement. And there are people now kind of who've produced apps that run alongside a patient journey to engage families from the beginning, because it's quite clear, isn't it, that if people have got expectations about the journey their loved one is on, ways they could engage, what are the goals, how might we support rehabilitation when people get home. Now, not every person we are supporting in a hospital will have a network, but many will. And actually there are tools out there. So whilst I'm not sure we necessarily need an off-the-shelf tool, we can certainly look at some of those, maybe talk to some of those providers, understand what they're doing, because there's always case studies out there, aren't there, to be found. And then I think, although we've got a focus on the community hospital in that regard, that general point about the carer voice and how we're bringing that in is something for us to reflect further on as well, I think.
Yeah, I know that's what you're saying. You know, I've visited one of our mental health boards where we have something like that, where we actually have a person, not a toolkit, but we have a person that follows the patient from the beginning as soon as they're. So we're doing really well in the mental health side. So how are we going to learn those lessons and move them to the physical health? Because we already have the blueprint. It's just lifting and share. Yes.
Very valuable comment. Thank you, Anya. I think so much of this talks to the experience of a patient, i.e. they're already a patient and what they're going through and how it went for them. But also what complements this, I think, really strongly and will build into your strategy, I'm sure, is the forward look, which is about the prevention agenda. Because so much of this is actually more proactive around population health and looking at the data and letting that drive some of the things that we spend time and energy and ultimately investment into. So I think this is a great report. It's very complete. You have been obviously extremely busy, which is great. Look
I'm jealous.
forward to seeing the strategy in due course. Great. Okie dokie, we're on to the performance report. Scott.
Thank you very much, Chair. So you've got the performance report here, and I'm just going to pull out a couple of points on here. Obviously, then when we have questions, this report covers a number of areas, so I might pull in colleagues to in those responses. So the performance report, as you know, it is evolutionary, and F&P had a bit of an advanced view of what the report is going to look like. Some of those elements have pulled through into this report, and there'll be further coming through the next time. Currently within the report, you've got visibility of the NOF. which is our national oversight framework and the metrics associated with those. But you also now have access to a range of other metrics which are potentially of interest to board. And again, we will evolve that over the coming months to make sure we've got the right suite of information. In terms of the NOF, there is very little change quarter on quarter, and certainly no statistical change in terms of the score within there. It is worth flagging, though, that there are going to be a significant change to the NOF going forward with the change in the number of metrics that are going to be measured. And the digital team and data teams are working through that at the moment, and we'll understand what that may or may not mean in the future. Also within here, we have not got this year's or 2025 staff survey, with the really positive position on our engagement score increasing by the most in the Midlands. That has not yet played through into this particular report, so it'll be interesting to see for the next quarter what that actually looks like. Some of the areas I want to pull out are around the 104s. So for community children, so this is about children's predominantly, and particularly the community paediatric space. So we're not where we need to be in terms of those weights. Obviously, it's not good for patients, and obviously it isn't a healthy metric. It isn't necessarily inconsistent with the rest of the country, but we now are developing very, very clear recovery plans, which will come through Finance and Performance Committee. They'll be looking to eliminate 104 weights in community paediatrics during this financial year, but also look at more of a multidisciplinary model, which will ensure people get to see the right professional as quickly as possible, whilst still being under the clinical guidance of the paediatricians. So that work is underway at the moment. I would also like to pull out some positive changes in terms of the staff sickness. As you know, we did develop a new strategy in this space, and I'm sure obviously maybe Sue can talk about that in a little bit. But as you can see, we have moved into a positive position, and the key driver of that is those the business partners within Sue's area, working with the teams where there might be particularly high sickness rates, just to understand what those local actions are and they need to be. So whilst it is still early days, positive initial signs, and of course the benefit for our patients is increased clinical availability, increased capacity to be able to see patients. It's hugely important for us to make sure we're properly supporting our staff and making sure that they're able to do the jobs they love. In terms of a couple of other bits to pull out, I've already talked about the staff engagement score. The details pull through on page 9 of the report, of the increase that we've seen there. Again, if we just go back to the where we put the improvement plan in place about 3 years ago now, the continuous improvement in that space is really, really rewarding. It's super important to me personally that our staff are engaged. They have the ability to influence what we're doing, and then you lay that alongside the patients with their report we've just had as well. Combining those two will be a big driver for how we develop our services as we go forward. Final things, obviously we've got a couple of other reports at the very back here looking at talking therapies. I'm taking particular interest in the 90-day target, so first treatment to second treatment, as we have had positive movement in other areas. It's quite a black and white target, that one. You're either above or below that particular metric. We can see in other data that we are getting closer and closer to that 90% line, and the team feel that we will achieve that target by October. So we're just staying close to that one to make sure we see that through. But again, that's the model which was looked at there was about training our own, bringing more staff through, and that is really starting to pay dividends now. Might just leave it there, Chair, and obviously happy to field any questions.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions for Scott? Can't let him get away that.
We can, Chair.
Any thoughts on the new format, I guess, colleagues?
Well, as you said, finance and performance have had a bit of a dry run at this. Gave you a decent kicking at that meeting. So
Do you mean a supportive challenge?
It's a supportive challenge.
Yeah.
No, but
no, that was a good session, and I think we'll refer to some aspects of it when we talk about the F&P report later on, specifically around children, young people, and community paediatrics. But the report more generally was the point. I think that's. I like the refresh.
I think in
in the
new
views.
areas, asking about and kind of address that between that first and second one. So what I was going to ask you about it. Very happy.
Thanks, Scott. I know you guys have done so much work on this, so and I appreciate yours, but also the others that have been to deliver this. I like the refresh, and I'm glad we went through and lifted the lid on it in finance and performance. We'll give the highlights a bit later on when we talk about that, but grateful for everything you do. Thank you. Good. Finance report, Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Two elements really I just want to cover off. Clearly, the report you have here is where we ended 25-26. It's a few to draw out, and then just a few comments about where we are as we move into 26. 26. Clearly. The report you have here, pleased to confirm that subject to audit, we ended the year in a very good shape financially. We achieved plans and both statutory financial duties and the statutory ones. So some really good results there. A few bits to draw out the cover sheet, but in terms of things that actually they look at in terms of how we go with our efficiency program, we really good result. We achieved that on the current basis we set out. We had non-recurrent element we carry forward into this year, but that's kind of a national expectation for some efficiencies this year. Some fantastic work across the trust, led by around the table in terms of temporary staffing, where they've been on a 3-year programme of continuous improvement and some absolutely stunning results from the teams. None of that's easy. It does involve some really difficult choices we go around through day-to-day work, but fundamentally this is about quality of care that we provide to our patients and driving that. So particularly Natalie leading us on that, some fantastic work. Clearly that continues into the coming year. John putting his shoulder to the wheel as well, particularly in terms of some of the stubborn recruitment areas we cover around some of our consultant departments. So those will remain our area to work on for the coming year. And then I was just going to draw out capital, which again we've seen another year of some really strong investment in the estate, digital infrastructure, and pleased to report the end of the year. So all of that will go through audit, which so this month to next through into audit committee. The key bits I did want to draw out though, just in terms of we look ahead and how we set up for the year ahead and how we actually performing. Clearly, it's quite coincide with the time we report. Key elements which you picked up from the papers that we've got. We completed the playing round with our local partners. We signed contracts which are in place, and we have delivered month 1 broadly in line with plans. So run rates look okay. We're working hard on the efficiency program, whereby we are trying to close out full plans for the end of May. We're making some very good progress on that. There are clearly a few stubborn areas which colleagues around the table are working hard on. Clearly, lots of engagement across the trust. And then in terms of the capital program for the year ahead, we have some quite exciting, but some big projects to deliver again, focusing on drawing plans together, working with colleagues around decades and so forth, what we need to do. ensure we deliver on the plan. So that was overview of what we've got there, and just a kind of reference to the things that we've got lined up this year.
Thank you.
Questions? Appreciated.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you so much for picking up on the temporary staff as well as you about, because it looks as if we've done brilliantly well, just amazing in terms of agents, and our bank is increasing. So how are we, or can you assure us that we're going to, where we worked on the agency, where we have our eyes back? Because it almost looks as if we're shifting from a different temporary model into another one. Can we be assured that we will have the same focus to reduce our bank spend without affecting the quality of service that we have to our patients?
I'll actually pick up the moment, but just to kind of put a few bits in perspective. Yes, there has been an element of swap out of agency to bank, and that has been a strategy. If you look at the actual numbers, there's also been an overall reduction in volumes. So it is the two, Natalie.
Yeah, and as Robert says, that was a very clear strategy about encouraging the staff who are regularly working agency with us to either move over to our vacancies or to work in the bank with us. So that was one of our very clear strategies last year. This year it is about reducing, as you said, that volume, and there's three really clear focuses in that. One is reducing our vacancies, one is reducing our sickness, and the other is reducing our therapeutic observations. And they're three key programmes that will enable us to reduce the volume of temporary staff that we need. That's the programme for this year.
Thank you. Any other questions for Robert? Thank you, Robert. And it goes without saying, congratulations on the delivery of our budgets for last year. Recognising that as we go into the future, it always gets harder and harder. The envelope seems to feel like it's shrinking at a rate of knots, but great job on the run rate so far as well for this month. I guess my question is around what you see are going to be the one or two key pressures we may have, the more material areas from a financial perspective that are going to challenge us in the year ahead, just for us to think about as a board.
Yeah, the normal ones I go to I've drawn out, so clearly a bit about managing control run rates, delivering efficiencies, make sure the programme is well planned and works to plan. Both those kind of givens, aren't they? I think the bit linked to that, though, that's probably a little bit hidden under that is we do have an element of time this year. We have a challenging plan to deliver, so getting away from that. But for the 2 years after this, we're particularly into the national shift around embracing digital technologies that drive productivity, and what we need to be doing through this year, we're getting into some of that. So lots of trust in this position. Obviously, we're fortunate to have Jen join us. We've got the restructure, which we think will help with that transformation, with that operational effectiveness. But those are going to be key parts that we need to see some real traction on this year to take us into next year. The other thing I would draw out then is that there's a few things that are going on in the financial framework, that the way the system, the national architecture works. The one we're particularly focused on is deconstructing the block. So that is effectively moving away from block contracts to more of a cost and volume activity and payment tied basis. That's a large programme of work that's running June to September and September till autumn. It's already started with acute trust, but community mental health, others through this year. That's probably the most significant element I see as we go forward, and it's absolutely one of those things that is both upside and downside risk, in that it is a mechanism to unlock productivity gains that we make, transformations that we make within the trust, so that we can secure the income, but it also drives us to be really clear about how we are recording, coding, accounting do to make sure that that is being appropriately thought through. So that's probably the key one. Outside of that, there's some big things on estates as well for this year in terms of getting ready for the next couple of years. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention the work we're going to do on putting together a strategic outline case for Evesham, which I think is really important, but also the investment monies that are there, both for community services and mental health, as well as making sure our digital infrastructures fit for what we need to do in terms of driving forward. So, sorry, I think a few bits in there, but you did ask.
No, that's a great response to my question. So thank you. Did you have a question? I keep noticing you waving. Thinking you're either just waving or you're just It's because you're right here. Sorry. Yeah, I always, given the opportunity, always speak very proudly of the fact that we respect the financial envelope that we have. And we attempt to live within our means, which we've done so far, notwithstanding the challenges that we face going forwards. But recognizing also the appetite to want to invest. You know, I'm thinking about Gemma for a second and our desire to look at all these wonderful things that we could be doing from a digital and technology perspective, and to find that balance as we go forward, because we recognize that to try and get some of the sustainable efficiencies we want from all the things we do across the medium and long term are only going to be a function of investing those things now. So we make some wise decisions as we go through the process. Good. Thank you, Robert. Sue, finally, yes, 2 years. Vice programs.
Well, actually, it's not. You're just going to have a few headlines from me, and then I'm going to pass to John to cover the adult mental health rehabilitation work, because John is the SRO for that programme. So just to say that what you've got in this report is a look back for the year-end position of 25-26, where we had 13 priority programmes. As we've just noted, we've got some really strong performance in a number of areas, and you can see that real step change around culture. We obviously implemented RIO. We've already just talked about the money. We've got some programmes where we know we've got more work to do. So some of those have rolled on into 26-27 and will now be part of the 8 priorities which we've agreed as a board. So because it's May, that we just need to know to the board, that was our year-end position for 25-26. And obviously we've had a lot of conversations about priority programmes for this year. So I don't think there was anything more I wanted to say about the assurance level, particularly, and then the deep dive this time, as I say, I'll be handing over to John. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions from me first. So I think this is well trailed across our governance, isn't it? So, okay, John.
Thank you, Sue. So I'm just going to provide a bit of a focus on the we have redesigned and mainly provide an update. I won't go through everything that's in the board paper, but just wanted to brief out a few points. So people will recall that we started this piece of work a timeline 3 years ago, and it all started as an improvement program across all our inpatient services that included rehab and rehabilitation and acute mental health inpatient services. And it's kind of expanded and grown into a separate program in itself, in that we to modernize mental health rehabilitation offer for the citizens of Herefordshire and Worcestershire. So we started quite a bit of engagement with staff to start with, and then with stakeholders. And essentially, there were some national drivers for us to focus on as well. We had a national guidance on rehabilitation services that was published, which we were not complying with to a large extent. We also have had national inquiries, especially into how mental health community services are being provided for people with severe mental illness. But also, I think we had a focus on length of stay and eliminating out of failures. And if you look at what Scott mentioned in his performance report, there are still individuals who are acutely unwell in our acute wards who are staying longer. So the question is, it's not a question of whether they should be in hospital or not, but are they the right type of hospital bed is the question. So there's a link with the acute program of work, and therefore we're looking at, redefining the purpose of hospital beds for rehabilitation and how they are distributed across level 1 and level 2 rehabilitation, but also we're looking at investment into our community element of rehabilitation work. So a significant process of engagement has happened, and as you can see from the report, we have kept relevant stakeholders fully informed. More importantly, we are following the NHS England change process, which in a way ensures that we do the right type of engagement, the right type of consultation, and go through a particular process. We have kept HOSC up to date. We have also been through stage 1 of the NHS England gateway process. And we recently had a stakeholder panel looking at multiple aspects of the options that the team have put forward. Now, in terms of next steps, this has obviously gone to board committees, quality and safety and workforce, because of the implications around that. And it's come here today, and we will have a bit of a further deeper discussion this afternoon around that. But there are further steps to undertake. It's going to the system partnership board, mental health partnership board, and then we will be inviting the clinical senate of NHS to come and ratify the process we followed and the legal model that come up with. And then we go into the pre-consultation business case and implementation towards the end of next year. So this is just a bit of an update on where we are with this program.
Thank you, John. Are there any specific asks as a result of highlighting some of the things you've highlighted on your report? I mean, I take the update, which is, I think, very, very useful. So thanks for that. Was there anything that you need from the board at this stage?
No, just to acknowledge the work that's been undertaken so far, the process followed, and just some assurance that there are some further steps that we will be taking over the next few months.
Thank you. Any questions for John? Oh, I mean, the paper is really clear, so thank you for updating. So thanks for that. Okay, it does say we should be at 11:20 having a break. However, it's 10:40, so keep going for a bit longer if everybody's happy. Okay, good. Helen, over to you on the board.
Thank you, Chair. So people will find for item 13 quite a detailed report, the board effectiveness report, which effectively is a review of how we're performing in line with the kind of CQC well-led framework. So it's quite a detailed analysis, and I just want to thank Mark Smedley, Head of Business Development and Planning, who has supported the work that has gone into this report. So in order to put it together, we triangulated a number of different elements. So we use the annual governance statement, we use some national technical guidance, we use things like committee annual reports, the review of the corporate governance framework, things like the scheme of delegation, SFIs, the BAP, etc. So there's basically, it's a triangulation of a whole lot of information. As well as one of the things that I know Mark did is look at it alongside the provider capability assessment as well, provider capability framework. So I think this provides a really helpful overview. It does also give a few pointers in terms of things that we might think about as we move forward in our board development programme. So, for example, you will be aware as board members that we have reviewed the way we structure our agenda, the way we present our papers. That is obviously a work in progress. I think when we were doing this kind of stock take, there was a couple of, this isn't a journey that you get to the end of and then say, right, we are now effective. It's a continuous process of continuous improvement. So I think that there are some reflections about how we spend our time, how our balance of time is. One thing we were reflecting is, would there be benefit in moving strategic items, which we now specifically have a section on, move them higher up the agenda so we're a bit fresher when we come to discuss strategic items. So these are some of the things that I'd like us to take into our board development time to consider. And they might seem like quite small things, but the way we use our time, the way we prioritise our time, that's really important as a board in terms of how the face we're kind of putting out to the outside world, as well as the time we're spending on different elements of our agenda. So I hope people will have found it a useful read. We've got some look ahead ideas for the development plan around, as I've mentioned, how we balance time again towards strategy, decision making and learning. I think it's really easy for boards to, and I say this as a sweeping generalisation, but to fall into the space of doing quite a lot of information sharing and bringing us up to speed. That, of course, is valuable, but it's something about how you balance that with actually crunchy decision making, time forming strategy, time on learning. And I think how we kind of continue to evolve the agenda is important there. I think something else that I would pull out that we've already agreed is a priority for us, but is deepen the use of the staff and the patient voice in our discussions at board. And obviously, Gemma, you've holding that around the patient voice, and we've already reflected on some of the look forward that we see coming into that strategy. So again, it isn't necessarily we need to solve all these things in the next 5 minutes. It's how we signal that as our direction of travel. So we set out some, Mark and I thinking about this, set out some ideas around some board development actions. There's some ideas as well here about how we do some kind of test cases maybe in our development sessions and practice some of this, because again, I think how you practice, how you develop your skills around challenge, discussions that are framed in culture and learning. Again, I think we're making really great progress in that, but you can spend time on actually practicing these skills in our development sessions. And actually, again, I'm just looking down the list and I'm seeing something that you've pulled out this morning on you already about focused development in leading through sustained organisational change. That tricky balance of we've got change going on, but how do we keep the show on the road? So hopefully people will see this as a reflective piece that starts to shape some ideas around the principles of board effectiveness and the code of governance for self-assessment and how we might weave that into our board development activities. Happy to take any questions on that and fully expecting us to spend more time shaping our board development programme together, of course. But I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Any questions for Alan?
I think if Colin were here,
Just thinking that empty seat over there,
he would
yes.
have questions for me.
Yes, please.
So I will certainly pick up with Colin in the break or a bit later on today, because yeah, I think that's absolutely fine. But we will have more time on this together, and I realise it is quite a lot of detail for today.
I guess I'm just being mindful of us having some new heads joining us soon, and whether we need to speak to the people who've been through a NED induction process and look at whether we need to be refining it, whether we embed that in here or that's a separate conversation. But it's all part of board development, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bringing in new people, and I mean that is also an opportunity to revisit the induction that we did some time ago, because new things change, don't they? So I think that review of how we do the induction, how we could improve it, are we covering the right things?
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
and it's very much part of this overall subject.
Yeah, and I think I would hope that things like this report would form part of people's induction, and we are working that through at the moment. I mean, actually, just as a marker, it would be useful, because some people have not been through induction that long ago, around the table, to hear your reflections on what was good, what might you have wanted more of now you look back, to feed in, because Sharon's busy putting the programme together and we're informing that, but we'd really welcome your reflections.
Yes. So
Go ahead, yeah, go
I
ahead.
guess what I would like to know is what practically are we going to see going forward, say in the next 6 to 1 year, to say that this is making the difference that we are hoping, and it's not enough a redesign. It's actually making that practical difference that we're hoping.
Well, I mean, to some extent, that will be, the eye will be in the beholder, won't it? So we'll come back around some of these questions. And I think next time, with a bit more time, it would be good for us to do a reflective exercise around the code and think about those areas together. We needed to do this in quite a short time frame this time, so we didn't have time to build that in. But I think were we to take effectiveness to the next level, we would do this as a reflective exercise together, and I think that would strengthen it. I mean, I suppose more of what you've started to see already. I mean, you've seen some practical changes to how we're using the board time and the development time. I think we all reflected, didn't we, that the last development session, the one we held at I'm sorry you weren't there. I'm just about to say it went really well when you weren't there. But it was a good session. I think we used the time in a very focused way. It was a nice balance of also spending time with service leads, them joining us for lunch informally, but also doing some visits. So I think, and all of that is part of bringing more of our colleagues' voice into the boardroom. I think we're having more senior leadership team come and join us for specific things. I think the work we're doing around that, we actually now have a patient experience report, but we'll develop that. But then some of the test is, how is the voice informing what we're doing? And that's much more of a reflective piece, isn't it, about us appraising our performance and thinking, when we think back to some of the case studies, and that's why I think doing some kind of case study work, let's look at a real example. What, encourage us around that, what's good about that, what could be better, and putting more of that learning more openly, like we did around the respite care paper, into the public domain as well, to reflect that we are a learning board who wants to listen and is taking consideration around the decisions we make, which does of course fit with the Nolan principles that we signed up last time as well.
Okay,
There you go.
it's not quite.
Oh, you've got some questions.
No questions, just I think it's interesting. I was reflecting on the numerous conversations I had with prospective NEDs recently. Let's face it, they're hoping to join our board. And it was one of, so what is the board do and how effective is it at that? That came up on a number of conversations. Right chunked up right to the very top, we are the champions of strategy and culture for our organization. This is where it starts. We role model, but also we advocate exactly what that strategy and the culture that we wish to have in the organization. And then it manifests itself in so many different ways: formalized objectives, frameworks like the board effectiveness framework, how we run our committee, so many different things. And I think the secret here is making sure a robust structure like this really helps us to work out, so how is it that we are going to be individually and collectively as effective as we can be? And if an external lens like a CQC were to walk in, what would they expect to see from a well-led organization? And are we behaving in those sort of ways? And I'd like to think that since the last time they came to see us and we had a well-led review, their impression will be very different. This is part of that journey, I think. So thank you for all the effort that you put into this. It's really worthwhile. Okay, back to you.
Thank you. So this is quite a straightforward paper, only I do need to flag a couple of small issues. So I think in between the paper initially being drafted and brought to the table and where we are today, we've missed some of the updates that happened to terms of reference. So I think we've got an out of date set in a couple of examples. So we'll make sure that we have up to date sets shared with all board members. I think, however, some of the principles do apply, which is that the messages are, we do have a clear and established committee structure. I think we do need to think about, in the context of the conversation we've just had, how committee development sits alongside board development. How are we reviewing our practice? are we taking the same principles about how we manage our agendas, not overwhelming with papers and details so that we can't see the wood for the trees. I think there's some things like that that we are trying to apply to board that we can, I think, apply into committees. I think also, what does it mean to be a chair of a committee? How we can support people who are in those roles. And again, to Carol's point, I think this particularly speaks to when we've got new people coming in. There's an opportunity, isn't there, for a bit of a stock take, because as well as reflecting on the role to induct new colleagues, it gives us an opportunity to reflect on the role for ourselves as well.
Yes.
So I think there's some work we can do there. So I think we've also picked up some areas for further development, including better articulation of interfaces between committees, and perhaps an enhanced consistency between the terms of reference, noting the caveat that I think it has transpired we do not have a quite up-to-date set. So we'll get that round for next time, but I hope that provides enough by way of an update for today, but happy to take questions.
Any questions for?
Not a question at all. I guess it's just, again, public board, just to make it clear that some of the completely agree with the spirit and the consistency. We just need to revisit, make sure the job titles are consistent throughout, because again, they're not. And I just wanted to make sure in public we're clear about there's an inconsistency there that will be fine.
Yes, absolutely right. And that's been part of the version control issue. Thank you.
Yeah. No, apologies to all board members who are seeing the papers here that have some inaccuracies. It's all corrected ASAP. Okay, if there's no other questions for Kevin, then we'll have a break now.
Yes.
If that's okay at this junction, before we go into the assurance section. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We're on to the joint section of the board meeting. And first up is Quality and Safety Committee report.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'm going to take the report as read, and I'm just going to highlight some key matters that we consider as a committee. I'm going to go through under the headlines and take any questions. We have no items for formal action under alert. However, under advice, we would like to draw out a few emerging operational risks that we are living at the moment. First one is a digital risk relating to physiotherapy referral. Fortunately, the referrals are not fully migrating from choose and booking to real. We have an interim manual in place, but we're looking at longer term digital solutions. We also looked at a new risk relating to future out of hours medical within our community hospitals. We have ongoing work at the moment with system partners to make sure that we secure some revised arrangements and maintain the service continuity. We also want to advise the board because we also reviewed the internal audit on duty of care, which showed that although we have a revised policy in place, we need further work to make sure that we're implementing it and we're engaging with patients. We have a detailed action plan and we'll continue to keep an oversight to include the committee. We looked at a refreshed approach to patient and carer race equality framework, including work that is focused on inequalities in access, outcomes, workforce, culture, especially recording of our protected characteristics. We agree that we'll maintain an oversight over that as well. In terms of assurance, we would like to assure the board when it comes to our NOF indicators, we reviewed that and we looked at our mental health length of stay and our community mental health survey. So in the NOF at the moment, what we have is the 2024 community mental health survey, but we reviewed the 2025 survey results and it demonstrated modest improvements. We now don't have any domains that are performing below average. We also noted the fact that we have relatively low response rates, and we discussed how we're going to strengthen participation and outcome measurement going forward. We looked at our CQC action plan, which was done after the last CQC visit. We were assured that the actions remain on trajectory, and especially work relating to estates, fire safety, staff support, and person-centered care planning. And there were some positive findings from the inspection, including our freedom to speak up, alongside some broader evidence of strengthening our culture and inclusion across the organization, which is coming out through our staff survey as well. There was further assurance around the patient safety framework. We looked at our consent to treatment and our system-wide discharge. In terms of the system-wide discharge, I know that we're in conversation around the system to make sure that we strengthen our discharge communication. That we took time to discuss our consent to treatment processes, and we were assured that we were not treating anyone without the necessary consent. We reviewed our 6-month staff survey, our safer staffing report, our safeguarding annual report, and our mental health act update, and we were assured that we were maintaining oversight over them. We were very happy to note that we started embedding our 150-day clinical trial setup metric, which our research and development team have been working on. And it shows that we are down to the targets, which is very good. And also we have continued strengthening of our medical advice. And finally, we looked at our adult mental health redesign program with Bishop, which we discussed this morning, talking about this left shift, trying to go from inpatient to community services while making sure that our service users remain connected to their community and the resources. So overall, I would say that it was quite productive, and we were assured, especially around the consent to treatment, because that was something that we were concerned about, but we received assurance around that quite a bit.
Very complete. Thank you, Wendy.
Again.
People and culture, yes, you're filling in for Sue, so thank you.
I'll also take this report as read and pull out some of the information that we would like the board to be aware of. So we discussed under alert, we discussed a few risks that were coming up in terms of the number of workforce, and we looked at the variation in terms of our statutory and mandatory training compliance. What we found is that there might be something about team and service level visibility. So we talked about strengthening it so that each team will be able to understand what is mandatory and what is statutory. However, we felt that this required some additional executive focus and clearer timescales for completion, because it's a piece of work, a bit of time. We also looked at the report following the internal fire safety summit, outlining some of our organizational responsibilities, our current challenge, and our planned work streams so that we can strengthen our governance, accountability, and operational preparedness around the trust. We looked at our national staff survey results, and we reviewed our staff experiences around abusive behaviors from patients and families. Although we noted that there was good practice and some post-incident support, but there is a bit of inconsistency across services. And so we welcome that we should have some further work to ensure that the support arrangements are equitable, they're accessible, and they're consistent across the organization. We also looked at, we want to advise the board, we also looked at our adult mental health design work, we looked at our BAF, and I have to say the BAF report, it's one that we want to commend because it was actually quite an improvement of previous reports. And we also looked at our staff sickness, our appraisals, our statutory mandatory training compliance, and we looked at some hotspot workforce pressures around and reviewed some internal audits around our resident doctors and their EDI and attraction and retention, EDI and culture subcommittees. We approved our Freedom to Speak Up action plan, and we reviewed our safe staffing report, and noting that for our vaccination this year, we actually met the target for our frontline staff. It's really good. And in terms of achievements, we would like to mention about our national staff survey engagement scores. We showed that we are the second highest movement nationally among mental health, which is actually quite good. And we noted the continued work to embed compassionate and inclusive culture across our people and strategy and trust behavioral program. And also we noted, and we want to celebrate the fact that our staff there's been a strong uptake on the stress awareness and resilience training, which is really good in terms of what we're talking about today. We think that, there's a lot going on. So hopefully our staff are making use of this training that we're giving them. So overall, we received some appropriate assurance. And although we have some areas we need to focus on, but we were assured that we have action plans.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, of course.
Small observation.
Yeah.
I'll just share with board members that at our executive committee this week, we've decided to commission some additional support to your second item on the alert list there around our fire safety action plan. So that will be something that will be in train quite soon because we recognise the urgency of that work. So the 6 work streams will provide more impetus. So we'll continue obviously to report through, but I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Any questions? I'll have that soon to answer them.
Thank you. F&P. I again will also take the report as read as the other 2 previous reports. To draw out, as we mentioned earlier in Scott's piece, the 104-week waits are continue to be monitored through that committee. The key area that we lifted the lid on, if you like, or shone a spotlight on, was the aspect of community paediatrics and long waits that we're enduring today. It's very clear that there's a different model that probably be the ideal way of dealing with some of the challenges we face here. Explored some of those at committee. It's clearly labelled at the assurance level it's on at the moment because it is a challenging area. But I have to say I think the committee decided on approving a robust plan of action regarding recovery on this. but I know that work is still underway. So thanks again to the team that are working on that. Number of other reports were reviewed and approved. You mentioned about the BAF already in your section, and again, we know that's ongoing. Appreciate all the work that's been done by you, Ellen, and your team to review what the Bush Board Assurance Framework looks like and how it's helping us to achieve some of the outcomes that we want to achieve. So thank you for the continued work on that. There weren't any specific risks on the risk register that we needed to escalate to board, and the reports that have been outlined on the paper were the ones that we signed off for information. Ones that I wanted to draw out, which I'm excited about, are things like the optimization delivery plan for Rio. So that's, you know, exciting stuff, and the whole idea of Rio was to make sure that we had an EPR system that would do its job, but actually down the line it's about the benefits and the optimization. So thank you for that. I don't have any other points to raise other than the financial performance of the organisation, which we've already congratulated the team for delivering. Any questions on F&P, and if colleagues that attended F&P add anything else? Okay, thank you. Audit Committee.
Yeah, it'd be relatively brief. There's only one or two items I wanted to highlight. Under the advise heading, we referred to the previous consideration that we'd had committee on the report on section 58 mental capacity and consent. That's been raised at the board, was aware of that. So what we've agreed is that the committee will take a step back, and now it's in the safe and competent hands of the Quality and Safety Committee. But we will seek further assurance further down the track that it has actually been sorted. We approved the terms of reference, which should have come to board, but will do in due course, and our audit work plan. Perhaps under the heading of Sure, there's a couple of issues to raise. Firstly, that the external auditors are sort of going through the initial warm-up phase at the moment. They'll be soon rapidly increasing the intensity of their scrutiny of what they've done in the accounts, but also under the heading of BFM. And it was interesting that they flagged in what was an informal briefing, really, the fact that they'd spotted we'd had a CQC report recently which identified issues, but they did confirm that they were assured, at least until it's evidenced fully, at our response to the fact that we knew it was an issue and that we dealt with it. And I think that was important, really, otherwise we'd have been experiencing some further challenge and perhaps negative comments in the annual BFM. That was reassuring. The internal auditors gave us their draft head of internal audit opinion, which is significant overall assurance. So that's a landmark. That's really good. We wouldn't want anything less, but it has to be worked hard to achieve it. So thanks to all those who've dealt with internal audit reports. And one of the things that we shouldn't, again, take for granted, although we always get it right, is the response to internal audit reports. We're good at doing that. And the only other thing, Chair, is we had a paper from Robert on the accounting policies, issues, estimations, etc., that have been used in compiling the financial statements. At the end of all of the audit process, the audit committee will be required to sign off and commend to the board a letter of representation where we say we're content with all of these judgments. So it was useful to see them check through that we're happy with the processes and procedures taken. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Colin. Any questions for Colin? Good. Thank you very much, Colin. Do we have a verbal on charitable funds report? The Health Joint Committee.
I can provide the verbal on charitable funds. Just to be clear, unfortunately, charitable funds met last Wednesday, which was just in time the papers have come in. So we have actually produced the report, which we can circulate to committee members. It was a reasonably straightforward committee, probably just a couple of bits to draw out. We had quite an in-depth review with the advisors just around the markets and investment strategies at the moment, which we gathered was quite a long speculative discussion, but it's helpful just to bring everyone up to a current understanding where we were. In terms of items, just to draw through for the committee, we are mindful that we will have a process to go through, as all the rest of the organisation, in the autumn, just in terms of thinking about how we align our charitable funds with the new structures that we've got within the organisation. And we held off doing any redistribution of income gains. Actually, it was a loss, but at that point, we'll assess all of that in the autumn. That's probably the requirements. A couple of the minor things. I think there was some good housekeeping just around some of the banking mandates to update, and we are going out for a local firm to carry out the independent examination of the accounts rather than relying on Deloitte as we have historically.
Thank you. Giving you first chance, so giving you first chance to ask a question.
Yeah.
Carol,
Yeah, sorry, the next item or this one?
yes, the next item. Oh, no, did you have a question on this item?
No.
That's all right. Then. In that case, next item, mental health.
Mental Health Joint Committee, no meeting since our last board meeting, and I would say the future of that particular committee is under consideration as part of the wider cluster arrangements.
Keep us posted on developments there. Good. National Staff Survey results this week.
And it's really great because it's a really positive update. And I just want to thank all of the staff that respond to the National Staff Survey. It's really important that we do hear the voices, because then we can learn what's working and what we need to do more of. So pleasing set of results that come through. So just some headlines. Anya noted earlier, second most improved mental health trust nationally, and actually the most improved trust in the West Midlands overall. So really positive performance. I was invited off the back of this to attend the Chief People Officer Network nationally the other week, and a lot of real interest, because a lot of organisations have either stayed static and in many places they've declined. So we are bucking a trend, still more work to do. So of all the 9 people promise areas, we've improved in all of them. We've now got 5 themes where we're above the benchmark. The Employer Net Promoter Score, Andrew wouldn't let me not talk about this. So this, I recommend the trust is the place to work. It's quite a stubborn metric for us, and we've actually seen now as we've done about the benchmark average, so that's great. However, within the results, we picked out a couple of areas which we need to focus on. Those are the parts that we took through to People and Culture Committee. So the focus is under safe and healthy. So really looking at burnouts, and then what Anya noted earlier about reporting physical violence and aggression by patients and families towards our staff. So we've already started some detailed task and finish groups, listening exercises to start to understand that a little bit more, so we can work out what we're doing well, what we need to do more, and the gaps we might have. Just to supplement this though, with an update from the Pulse survey, so our local survey, we've had the highest response rate in the last cycle, so nearly 1,000 responses, and our culture score continues to improve. So we've now got a statistically significant improvement now, sustained over a period. So that is absolutely wonderful. So it shows some the work we've been doing on the compassionate culture, the improvement journey. We are some way down the track, and clearly the more we listen, the more we learn, the more we can do more with the stuff that we know is making a difference to our frontline staff. So yeah, thanks to everybody involved, and we'll have more of the same going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Yeah, I echo your thanks to everybody. Because it shows that some of the work that we do, and I know we've talked about this before, picking up the teams that we're not hearing from. I know we have so many avenues of hearing. Is there a way that we're triangulating it, bringing all of it together? And how do we get sight of that? Because whenever we see this report, it says this, we're not hearing from some teams. So how do we make sure that we, the board, maintain sight of even those ones we're not hearing from through some of these channels or through other channels?
Yeah, and I'll bring Scott in as well. I think longer term we recognise that the restructure out in operations teams, aggregate some of our teams together. That's not just obviously the staff survey, it's really the service resilience, but that will put them then greater than 10, which means we actually will get a better visibility because we'll be able to receive the feedback. Otherwise, a lot of the work that comes to IG is doing that triangulation piece. So I don't know, Scott, Natalie, whether you want to say about how some of that happens in practice.
Go, you look poised.
I've spoken for a while. You feel the need to externalise.
Steal your
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is you know, for all the work we've done over the last years, it is vitally important, and we take it really seriously for hearing the voice of our staff. Obviously, that is one mechanism. There's a whole series of other mechanisms where it's freedom to speak up, or coming through individuals, managers, as well as the other mechanisms we've got. The important thing for me is that the conversations we have around it, and then the actions we take off the back of it, and also the more people can resolve between them and whoever else it is, or their manager. I think that's a really positive thing. So it's a mixture of the formal routes, the informal routes, taking reports, say, from the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian through the operational channels, understanding what the themes are, what the themes out of the RES and the DARES, what the themes out of the Pulse, what the theme out of the National Staff Survey. You can cut both of those obviously by race. You can cut them by cut them by all protected characteristics, and try to encourage teams of managers to have conversations about, right, well, this is our score. What's it telling us? What do we think we need to take from this? What do we need to perhaps consider doing differently?
Can I probe that a little bit more? Do we have teams that through all the mechanisms think we're not hearing from? And if we do, well, because there's something about, you know, when it's an aggregated data, you might lose some, and we don't even know that we're not hearing from them. That's why I'm asking about the complete picture. Do we ever think we'll get a complete picture? We've done the piece of work. If we haven't, this is something we're thinking about.
Can I just ask you,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
I just want to be clear on the question. Could you say it again?
Okay, are there teams we're not hearing from? We're not aware that we're not hearing from them?
Well,
Because,
the answer to that is yes. But
okay,
therefore, what are we trying to, what's the
do
question?
we
we're trying to
have
answer?
plans for recovering that
Right,
and making
okay.
sure that?
So how are we going to increase the sample?
Might just respond on that a bit. So the one caveat I would put on the teams analysis, as at the moment we know that the data we hold on teams is not particularly accurate. So one of the things that we've also got in mind for this year, alongside making sure that we STU structure set up, is a piece of work. It's one of those things that it sounds like it's really easy to do, but actually it's really quite hard. Which is to triangulate what we hold on our ledger, what we hold on our ESR system, and how that aligns across to the categorisation of teams that are aligned in the staff survey, and also where you aggregate that up to. Like, when is a team a team? You might think that's an easy question, but actually it's not quite such an easy question. So I'm not dismissing the fact we need to hear from all our teams. I think we do. But I think the number of teams we say we don't hear from reflects data issues as much as it reflects teams we don't hear from. Undoubtedly, there are some teams we don't hear from. But I think if we can crack the data issue first, we'll have a much better picture of then to both align our data and understand where to look. So in a sense, we need to get that foundation sorted. And then build from there, because at the moment we're at risk, I think, of going off on some wild goose chases where, you know, I think we discussed a team, they hadn't existed for 5 years or something. Yeah, so they are still on the list saying, well, I'm not surprised they're not responding because they don't exist. So, you know, you could go off on a wild goose chase if you weren't careful. So I think we've got to do that, and we're scoping that, and then that will feed into the better intelligence, which will feed into the better triangulation, which will then help us know more where to look.
start in September.
Yeah, oh, that's,
Originally
yeah.
stated.
I was just going to, in terms of managing expectation, I think it's likely that we will have another staff survey.
Yes.
Through because of the significant amount of work that Ellen's outlined here.
Yeah, so we'll, yeah, if we start in September, the survey will have already.
Yes.
Yeah.
The work will probably take 9 months as well, so it'll be the following survey, that'll be the 2027, where it should be, and then so that'll report in the December 2027.
Didn't know whether you
I
were
was
waving.
wondering.
You're waving your. So I went to a live auction of livestock the other day, and you only have to literally twitch it. So I didn't know whether you were bidding for a question or not.
Yeah. Certainly you've been.
So you just bid for a question.
Yeah. Yeah, he's very sensitive.
You've got a whole flock of sheep.
I was wondering about, so I think that's all absolutely important, isn't it? But I think, again, this comes back to the integrated governance conversation, doesn't it? And making sure that's all clearly aligned. But equally, when you said, are we assured? Well, there'll be some teams that we won't hear about, because through integrated governance, if everything's really effective and they're not raising any concerns, and so at every level of integrated governance, it gets smaller and smaller. So other than some celebrations you should hear from those teams, we won't necessarily get some detail, but equally, I think we share that accountability to be curious in integrated governance around, we haven't heard from dental, we haven't heard from our learning disability team. So what's, and pulling that out.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good point. And I think, again, it talks about where do you aggregate that to? Because when we do our sort of care group bit, we will have some chunks of sort of service blocks, and you can absolutely do that triangulation. I think the other thing that might be worth saying is, as we always, I feel the need to say it because we should say it every time, is to remind anybody who may be listening that the staff survey is totally anonymised, unattributed, which also matters where you aggregate it to, because clearly aggregating it to a team of 3 would be far too personalised. So we have to aggregate it to a level where it maintains all its integrity about being anonymised and non-specific and generalised. That encourages people to really give us their free comments and not feel they have to modify them in any way. But also to say that at that very aggregated trust-wide level, we are also making sure that we take those themes as informing our executive objectives. So we are building them in at that level as well.
Colin.
I agree, lots of good news, and we're certainly on an upward trajectory. But for me, one of the slight negatives in the path that we've got is the statistic that relates to physical violence.
Yes.
I guess the obvious question is, are we satisfied we're doing enough?
I can jump back on that. So, and I think, Colin, it's really interesting when you look under the layers of what that is. So where we've got some really good pockets of incidents happen, they're well reported, but equally staff are well supported and feel they have really good access to debriefs, and we appropriately liaise with the police. And then we think we've got areas where there's significant underreporting and behaviours are really tolerated, and often it's, oh, you know, gosh, it's their age, they didn't mean to do something. So we've got different pieces of work we need to do with different parts of the services, and it's really wrapped up in that compassionate leadership, our trauma-informed care, our becoming absolutely not tolerating racial abuse. So we have got different pockets of work. Are we doing enough? I think at the moment we're still pulling it all together because we've got lots of different strands of things happening, but it needs to come together as one comprehensive, very clear plan of this is what we're doing.
But when did it reach that position?
We say end Q2.
End of Q2.
Yeah.
Q2.
That's coming through PCC, I guess.
Yes.
We have it on our timeline.
And I think it'd be nice to note, Sue and I discussed earlier, we've got our new Chief Psychological Professions Officer joined us and is finishing off her induction. And she's already blossomed into this space and pulling that together. We've talked about joining maybe potentially PCC, because absolutely she's got so much to add in this space as well.
I mean, you're absolutely right to highlight that we should all, individually and as a collective, as a board, be extremely worried about this sort of stuff. Not least the people who are not reporting. At the same time, those who are being subject to physical or verbal abuse, and what is the organisation doing in response to that? And the good news is, I think we have good structures in place for that, and more work, as you quite rightly said, Natalie, to go in respect of this bit here. Any other questions? I took the opportunity of going and seeing Andrew Hasler and his team, and I think, is it Beth who runs the staff survey stuff? I mean, she does it almost single-handedly, not quite, but almost single-handedly, does an unbelievable job. And we did explore exactly some of those questions that you raised earlier on, but specifically also, how do we just increase the sample size? 48%, which is a tad down on what we did last time. The same sorts of themes come up when there's resistance to wanting to spend the time doing a survey. Is it going to actually make a difference? Is it anonymous? And in the past, it's never really changed. And I've done it before, nothing ever changed. I think we need to, again, take those types of things extremely seriously as we think about our plans on that loop. When we act for our staff and do things in relation to things that they're telling us, we need to be able to successfully and articulately play it back to them, so that they can understand the vital ingredient that they were in forming an action that we undertook, and then play that back to them. I think there's communication and other things that we need to do, probably enhance some of that feeling of trust and confidence towards the survey. I think I'm absolutely a believer that the more sample size we get, the breadth of views will change. And I often wonder whether we're getting these type of responses because it is the cohort that is responding. And would an increased sample size change what the views are, or would it actually possibly just say exactly the same thing? I don't know. And that's why I think we should always strive to make sure the sample size is big as possible. Not least from a comparative perspective, we're not as high as the average. But they didn't take that lightly when I fed it back to them, Andrew and his team. I think they recognise that it's a task that they want to undertake. Okay, good. Anything else on this one? Okay, we're on the medium-term plan.
Yeah, this is a very quick item because we context the medium plan in March. This was when we submitted it to NHS England. There was a calculation we'd made around the mental health children and young people, 104 trajectory. We had some discussions with the national team, and we were informed that ADHD and ASD weights were not included in the mental health CYP 104-week trajectory. So we weren't the only organisation who put them into that category, but we were then asked to take those out, which then gave us a very different trajectory overall, because we know the challenges we've got in those areas in both terms of numbers and weight. So it's not to diminish that, but that was the way in which other trusts were asked to complete it out of sync. You'll see there we put down the commentary, and that was the change therefore to go transparently into public board today. That was the final sign-off version to NHSE.
Okay, I will be asked to approve this. So any questions for Sue?
A nice easy start to attend to. When you submitted this, was there any part of it where you thought to yourself, we're going to really struggle, and if there is something, should we be increasing our scrutiny just to make sure we keep up with what we set ourselves as a target?
It's a good question, Colin, isn't it, really? I might look to colleagues as well. I mean, I think we know that our sickness is an area of focus, and that's going to really take us to keep our hand on the tiller. I think they're the ones that you probably pick up in the north. As I say, just because they might not be in that particular category, we know we've got these long waits that are sitting in community paediatrics, and that's a real focused area for us from a performance point of view. Rob's talked about the money, the efficiency target, and we've already picked up that it isn't going to get any easier with the agency and bank spend. So I think actually the NOT probably does pick up some of the headlines of focus for us, and the ones where we've got some challenges at the moment. We keep our hand on the tiller in terms of maintaining that. I don't know, colleagues, whether, Rob?
Yeah, I think it's the piece around this isn't just a one-year plan. Actually, when you look at this, it's the challenge that comes over years 2, years 3. We've got lots in here. It's all interrelated, isn't it? But those things around, we need the innovation, the adoption of technology to drive some of the productivity that we need to do to drive through the efficiency. We've got the whole change programs that we've got to do. We've got to take the staff moves on that. As Sue says, some key performance elements in there, as well as things like SIPs and so on. So I think it's all there. Colin, there's really some.
Any other questions on this one? We're plowing through this agenda, aren't we? Okay, good. In that case, we've finished all the formal items and we have any other business and a few other bits and pieces at the end regarding the signature, sealing of documents and appointments. In terms of any other business, I'll go first, if I may. I formalised and requested whether Carol would like to be deputy chair of the organisation, which she kindly accepted. And so I'm really pleased to say that we have a new deputy chair. It means that I can offload on some of the items I'm, which is great. But no, but you know, colleagues that fed back to me at the time that I was away in Australia, and Carol kindly stepped into chairing this board meeting, but other meetings as well. I have absolute, and I know that all of us do, have absolute trust in Carol's integrity and a sense of wanting to make sure that we fulfil the purpose of what we're here for. And she's absolutely wedded to the idea of making sure our population, our patients get the best outcome. So that's what better deputy chair could we ask for? Thank you, Carol. We have an item on, is there any other items of any other business anybody wanted to share? We've got an item on signatures of documents, but it was more of an approval. The orthotic supply contract was approved outside of formal board meeting by the board, so I just wanted to record that's done. And I don't have any other items to raise, I don't think. Do want to congratulate some appointments that we've made. So for the record, Dr. Groom, Dr. Remand, Dr. Wiseman and Dr. Soyemi, three of which I met during the process. Exceptional candidates and very welcome to the organisation, wishing them all a successful career with us. If there's anything else anybody wanted to raise, if not, then the date of the next meeting is 16th of July. Look forward to seeing you all. Fab. Thank you.